Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Legislative Review Committee of the Athens-Clarke County Unified Government. We have a quorum, so we're going to get started. Does anybody have any corrections to make to the minutes? Minutes are adopted, unanimous consent. Any public input on the two agenda items we have?
Yes.
Okay. Go for it. Just tell us your name and you got 3 minutes. Go for it.
Hi, my name is Erin Jimenez. I'm a resident of Athens-Clarke. I'm also the Marketing Community Liaison Specialist for Brandon's Pharmacy in Athens. I've been following the marijuana penalty option item since it was introduced in February. And it seems like there was one major argument in opposition to this item. The misdemeanor marijuana is not prosecutable, therefore the need for an ordinance has diminished. I want to make two arguments to counter that. Number one, just because it is not being prosecuted does not mean it is not prosecutable. And two, there is a need for an ordinance despite misdemeanor marijuana not being prosecuted right now. To expand on the first argument, I want to quote Captain Harrison in the March 3rd LRC meeting. We decided as a practice, and what was really merited across the state is because we had no way to test it, we ultimately had no way to prosecute it in a misdemeanor marijuana case as opposed to it being legalized hemp. So the phrase not prosecutable is only true in the sense that the local police departments do not have the funding to send every sample to be tested. Hypothetically speaking, if liquid chromatography was made more accessible and affordable for those police departments, would misdemeanor marijuana still be considered not prosecutable? Would there be a need for an ordinance then? My second point is there's a need
You can
for...
leave it open. Sorry, go ahead.
My second point is that there is a need for an ordinance despite misdemeanor marijuana not being prosecuted right now. Passing an ordinance could make it clear and formal where ACC stands on this issue. I know there is a concern that this could increase confusion, but there is confusion now that needs to be addressed by an ordinance. Chisholm stated in the March 3rd meeting that the Solicitor General's office has received 6 cases where the only charge with misdemeanor marijuana since 2020, and they were dismissed by his office. Although 6 cases may not seem like a big number, those involve 6 people who should not have been bothered at all if this charge really is non-prosecutable, as is said. An ordinance could also acknowledge systemic harm caused by the criminalization of this plant and more broadly the war on drugs. I would look at Clarkston's language in the whereas section, for example, as a wording for that. Finally, an ordinance could re-sentence and restrict prior misdemeanor marijuana convictions. For an example of that, I would look at Tybee Island's ordinance that was passed in August of 2021, well after the Georgia Hemp Farming Act. It states, within 6 months of the effective date of this ordinance, the clerk of the Tybee Island Municipal Court shall ensure that all prior misdemeanor marijuana convictions are resentenced as city ordinance violations, that such charges are restricted for the defendant's GCIC, and that the court record is sealed if all charges related to the underlying arrest were dismissed, null pros, or reduced to a city ordinance violation. I know my time's wrapping up here, but I also wanted to acknowledge that during the last meeting, this item was tabled due to a lack of responses from other municipalities. I took the liberty of calling Tybee Island's municipal court yesterday and spoke with a lovely person who told me that the hemp rule was never a concern for them. And they're working on doing the resentencing and restrictions for the ordinance. They seem like really nice and responsive people, so I would like to see Tybee added to the list of places that are being contacted for information. So thank you all. I hope you have a great day.
Great. Thank you. Any other public input?
My name is Alan Hart, and I am the owner of Franny's Pharmacy here in Athens. We are a dispenser of cannabis under the hemp laws. What I want to share with you is a story of a lady who came in. Her name was Sharon Smith. She came in and visited with me in my store, and we talked to her about her being an 84-year-old woman with heavy loads of osteoarthritis as well as osteoporosis, and a diagnosis of a neuropathy. She tried some of our salve. I talked to her about how CBD can help her body. And after about 45 minutes, she was relaxing in a comfortable chair in my store when I was about 50 feet away talking to a niece of hers who was about my age. We were talking about some of the things that CBD can help with. When Sharon gets up from her chair and walks halfway to visit us and ask us a question, looks back and realizes that that was the first step she's taken without her walker in over 3 years. CBD is amazing, but the whole plant is better than the sum of its parts. If we could provide something with higher THC, we would. I know we're not addressing that here today, but the fact is that the cannabis plant is amazing and it's great for everybody. And even though it would cut into some of my business, if you guys were able to expunge some of the laws and remove some of the nastiness that's been put into our laws in a corrupt manner. And I'll expand on that really briefly because I don't want to just cast aspersions, but when the Controlled Substances Act was passed in 1970, Richard Nixon had an $8 million study in his hand that said marijuana was good. And he put it on the top of the list as a Schedule I item anyway. I take CBD because I need it to help me function. I am somebody who has high anxieties and crippling self-doubt. There's a lot of people in our community who suffer from very similar items. By having the ability to carry around some marijuana would enliven and enrich our community. One of the great things about what cannabis is that it interacts with our endocannabinoid system. We have a body system. In fact, all mammals have a body system called the endocannabinoid system that helps us to regulate all other body systems. It is important because this body system, when it is engaged, can defeat cancer and a lot of the autoimmune disorders that we suffer from on a regular basis. So by allowing more marijuana in our community of these for possession purposes, we can actually nourish and enliven and enrich a lot of the people in our community to give them the opportunity to come out of their shells like I have, to be able to be a person, to walk around freely and without pain. Ms. Sharon Spitt would spend much of her mornings before having CBD to actually help her out.
30 seconds.
She would spend much of her mornings just getting her prepared for the pain that she would feel throughout the day because none of the pharmaceuticals could touch what she suffered from. Cannabis is this plant that has been given to us by God, whatever you believe in as far as a spiritual guidance, or if you just want to call it nature. There have been, thank you very much, everyone.
Got it. Thank you, sir, for coming. Any other public input on the
Yes.
agenda? Sure, go ahead, sir.
My name is Wesley Grantham, and I'm a beekeeper in Winterville, and I harvest my honey and I infuse it with Delta 8, and I started a business called Mellow Bear Honey. I follow under the 2018 Farm Bill, so I'm compliant with that. And when I sell, meaning that it is less than 0.3% Delta 9, and it is all lab tested from a DEA certified lab. And going kind of on Alan's story, when I was at Bishop Park recently, I had a lady who came up and her son was buying some honey from me. And the lady had Parkinson's and she was just shaking constantly behind her son. And I asked him if she could have a little sample of the honey to try out. And she did. She walked around about 45 minutes and came back and she was so much more calm. And she just had tears in her eyes and was crying and said, the doctors, the medication, nothing has helped work for me. But this honey here. Because it was activating that endocannabinoid system. You have THC receptors and CBD receptors from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And if they just stay dormant and just sit there and not activated or engaged, then it's missing out of a lot of potential holistic healing that your body can heal by itself. Going back on what we're talking about today, does anybody, do you know what hemp looks like compared to, say, marijuana? It looks pretty much the same. It smells the same. For somebody to be pulled over, and if they have just left Franny's Pharmacy and bought a fully legal, piece of, say a piece of hemp, and a cop looks at them and says, "What is that?" Well, it's hemp. No, I think that's marijuana. I mean, the word marijuana to me it just really bothers me because that is attached to racism. That's one of the reasons that the word marijuana with the J is relating it back to immigrants coming over, Mexican immigrants, to be precise. And without having taxation, which is something that we could definitely benefit from in our community with cleaner water, more with teachers, the salary of teachers can go up by being able to tax that and decriminalize it, and it not be looked at as this bad thing. This a gateway drug that leads to all this other hardcore things. This simply is not true. The studies will show that. I mean, the studies will show what kind of benefits that it can provide. And I think having that in the community and it not being decriminalized is a very, very important thing. And the question is, it's coming soon. Legalization is coming soon. So how will y'all now put into effect how you would like to regulate that? Because I do think it needs to be regulated without a doubt. It doesn't need to be in gas stations. It doesn't need to be where 18-year-old can easily get their hands on it. It needs to be in a pharmacy or in an adult store.
30 seconds.
But I think it's definitely something the community can benefit from, and it is an important topic because it is coming. It's just how we all address it when it gets here, and I think that's as far as decriminalization now is a good step forward and to open the doors to that. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other input? All right, hearing none, let's get going. Attorney Drake. Hello, sir.
Lisa couldn't be here today, so I'm standing here.
All right. See you. Welcome. Mr. Jones, what have you for us on this marijuana penalty agenda item that we sort of deferred on last month in our quest for more comparative information from other municipalities?
Couple of things. I've got some information that staff put together as it relates to pros and cons. But I'll first speak to what we've been able to do as it relates to our research. So Chamblee, we reached out to the city of Chamblee. I can kind of read it verbatim. They've said that they have not had any challenges enforcing the ordinance. They don't know, but will suspect this is because Chamblee police officers are not arresting people for possession of less than an ounce. Further, we talk about since the Hemp Act, DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, Fulton County, and perhaps Cobb County in the near future no longer prosecute possession under Title VI. So that was Chamblee's answer. We've also reached out to Macon Bid, have not been able to connect with them, but Solicitor Grist is willing to connect with us and talk to us about it. But that's the only answers that we've been able to receive.
Oh, great. Well, I'll throw it to the committee. Would anybody like to make a motion for staff action from this point?
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to draft an ordinance, and I have some particulars for it that I can share if I get a second.
Okay. There's a motion.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so there's a motion on the table to request that staff draft a marijuana penalty ordinance. All right.
Parallel ordinance, if you will.
All right.
So yeah, I think we can pull from the best of what other communities have already done. I'd like to use the definition of marijuana that Doraville uses. I think it's the most comprehensive. So it covers a lot of the things that have happened with science and technology in the last few years. I'd like to include Section 3 of the Tybee Ordinance, which covers a direction to their municipal court clerk to examine, to reduce the misdemeanor sentences and resentence them as ordinance violations from the past. And then also to do the records restriction, which our Solicitor General is already doing. And I would like for the penalty to be $1. Because I think what we're trying to do here is not collect revenue off of this, but to, send a clear message that what we want to have is a unpenalized substance as much as possible. Right now we have the understanding that we have this relaxed prosecutorial posture in our Solicitor General's office, but that could change. I think some of the points that were raised by some of our public commenters, touch upon the need for us to have maybe a backstop in case the access to that technology starts to get used more for the misdemeanor level things. And I think it also is going to provide more clarity for the community. And then one last point I wanted to share. Our incoming Solicitor General, Will Fleener, who's currently the Assistant Solicitor General, shared this when asked in a survey, how will your office utilize local level legislation regarding decriminalization, i.e. of sex work or possession of substances? And he said, I was involved in the decision to stop arresting and prosecuting individuals for misdemeanor possession of marijuana after the passage of the Farm Bill in 2019. While it appears that the legislature is not inclined to make any changes to allow for the prosecution of simple possession of marijuana to resume, I understand that there is a concern that this could change. In light of that, I am not opposed to a county ordinance to create a small civil penalty for simple possession, so long as there is the understanding that we do not want individuals to be cited under the current circumstances. So, when we hopefully draft this ordinance and move it along and come with the directive to staff to keep doing what they're currently doing, which is not arresting people. But we've got this on the back.
Okay, so let me sort of clarify your motion, because, you know, I hear your motion to request that staff create a draft marijuana penalty ordinance. But then in your remarks in support of your motion, it sounded like you had specific aspects that you would request be incorporated in that draft.
Correct.
Okay, so do you want to intimate those
Yeah, I can-
specifics so that they
I would
can be
like
part
to-
of your motion, so that staff knows to put those in?
I'll amend my motion.
Question. So if staff, in other words, if staff does not include your wording, so does that mean anything? I mean, they may come up with some other wording, and I don't think that we're in a position, I think we can give a suggestion, but I don't think we're in a position to tell staff what the wording should be. Now, I was kind of changed my mind, but I'm not going to harness staff with exact words. You can give examples, you can give some thought, but I don't think if they come back with something different or a lot more elaborate or better or worse, that they should be tied to the work. That would be my.
Okay, well, let's see. I hear what you're saying. Let's hear what he's gonna amend, see if it gets seconded, then your remarks will be in order on that. You basically speak against the amendment, so go for it.
Yeah, you know, what I've heard from staff is
Just restate your
We've
motion
talked about
specifically.
copy pasting other counties' ordinances, but they're not all the same. So staff has asked us for guidance on, you know, which ordinances would we like to look at when we're modeling ours after other communities. And so that's what I was trying to provide, some guidance on the sections that vary in different communities.
Okay,
So
so,
those sections would be,
so would it be, so I guess that's the key point that maybe Commissioner Thornton was touching on, guidance versus direction.
sure. So I can say, I make a motion to direct staff to bring back to us an ordinance draft that includes, or that can, we'll say that considers. How's that?
Okay.
That considers
That's good.
section 3
Yep,
of the Tybee ordinance
yep,
that considers the definition of marijuana used by the Doraville ordinance, and that sets the penalty at $1.
okay, so 3
points.
points of, what did you say? Consideration, thank you. The Doraville definition, the $1 penalty, and the section 3 resentencing and tithing.
Correct.
All right, is there a second?
There's a second.
Second, okay,
I don't think I have anything else to.
okay, good, all right, go for it.
I just wanted to clarify, one, what that Tybee Island section 3 was that you just mentioned.
Parliamentary inquiry, section 3 on the Tybee Island
It says
dealt
within-
with resentencing.
Within 6 months of the effective date of this ordinance, the clerk of the Tybee Island Municipal Court shall ensure that all prior misdemeanor marijuana convictions are resentenced as city ordinance violations, that such charges are restricted from the defendant's GCIC, and that the court record is sealed if all charges related to the underlying arrest were dismissed, null processed, I'm probably saying it wrong, it's Latin, or reduced to a city ordinance violation. Defendants shall receive notice of the resentencing by regular mail to their last known address.
Is that clear enough for you to consider?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, you know, I don't, so
You can look into.
this first I've heard this, we want to
Yeah.
look into this to see if we feel like comfortable that's
Right.
appropriate to direct the clerk in that manner.
Right,
And
Okay.
I'm sorry,
I just wanted to respond that I would want to ask staff to give the pros and cons of those 3 points.
yeah,
I agree with the putting forth a ordinance here for the decriminalization of marijuana locally. I think I agree with some of our speakers. This is what I was thinking last week when I was thinking about that. You know, we already have something on the books, but that seemed to be based a lot on technology that was only available at the state level, and it made it too difficult to evaluate hemp versus marijuana locally. That could change very easily. Technology changes. So I am totally for it there. Also, there's been a lot of discussion among our colleagues in support of this. So I think it's important for us to get something through so it could be discussed by the larger body as well.
Thank you. Anyone against the motion?
No, I had a comment.
Somebody, okay, 1 second.
I've got a comment.
Go for it. Yeah.
In realm of the discussion of it, and
Yeah.
it follows up in the, would be against the motion, because we've been studying this in committee, learning that we already have de-emphasized and we do not criminalize 1 ounce and under. And I appreciate our speakers. I appreciate the work that's available for you. I appreciate the hemp act going through so that you have a legal product that is helping everybody. I'm all about that. I'm all about the state level making this right. I'm not supportive of trying to make a pocket area that is confusing to people in making an ordinance on a hypothetical situation of what the state may or might not do. Right now, it's not being prosecuted at 1 ounce and less. I think that's good. We maybe should promote that if that's what we want to promote. But to have to put people into a citation that sends them through the stresses of court to not be enforced costs time and money from a lot of people, and stress for the person with the citation, stress for the family of the people with the citation, that I wouldn't want people to go through. I've been in court with my sons. It's not a fun situation to try to get them off or hope they're going to get off. The solicitor's time, staff's time doing this, the ordinance, and then not having a penalty for all the time that's being put into it. When I thought we were already at a good place. There was a time when we wanted to start studying this, when we would have been ahead of that hemp act. And that's when this all made sense to me. But now that that's happened at the state level, and we have what I feel is a very look the other way and not cite unless they're doing something else that is a violation of the law, sort of thing. So that's where I am
Great.
On this.
Thank you. Speaker in favor of the motion. Anybody like to speak in favor of the motion again? I think maybe the more we go back and forth, we can kind of winnow down our comments, you know.
Yeah, I think, to be clear, this would accompany instructions to staff to not change the way they're currently approaching things, given that relaxed prosecutorial posture. But right now, everything's being described as essentially a gap in state law, and there is testing that's done on larger quantities.
And I understand felony level part.
All
We're
right,
talking
all
about
right. Order.
And
Please
so-
direct your remarks to the chair. Thank you. Continue.
So there is the possibility that technology will become more available. I mean, if it's going to be used for higher levels of possession, or distribution, higher level charges, we'll say. We see this happen all the time. Technology becomes more affordable over time, it becomes more accessible. Our police department makes decisions administratively all the time that we're not necessarily aware of. I think the administrative decisions around this were not things that we were aware of until after they'd already been underway for quite some time. I think this is a way for us to make sure that we're setting up our community to be the kind of community we want it to be in the future if things change on a state level, if things change on the free market of tools that are available. I also think that there is a real value in the opportunity this gives our DA, Solicitor General, our courts in general to look at past sentencing and potentially make some changes similar to what Tybie's doing. I think those are two real benefits to this. In addition to the fact that I think this will make it clearer to the community. I think we can, while we're simultaneously broadcasting better that we're not arresting people for this, we can also be broadcasting that we have joined the dozens of other communities in this state that have passed a similar ordinance. So, thank you.
Anyone like to speak against the motion?
I'm not going to speak against it. I'm just going to vote against it.
Okay. Any other speakers against? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of directing staff to create a draft marijuana penalty ordinance for the consideration of this committee that considers the Doraville definition of marijuana, section 3 of the Tybee ordinance, and possible penalty of $1. For those in favor of that direction, please
Can I ask a question?
raise your hand. We're about to vote.
I'm sure you read that, but did you also note that Commissioner Myers noted the pros and the cons to when it comes back in ordinance? Did you put that?
Yeah. That's part of the staff
Okay.
considering,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right. All in favor, hold your hand. All right, all opposed? Okay, Chair, I'll cast the tie in favor to direct staff to create a draft for the consideration of this committee to look at and see if we can possibly find a way forward on this issue. Thank you, everybody. Next up, we've got our leaf blower ordinance, gas-powered leaf blowers as pertains to our noise ordinance. That was referred to this committee back in November of 2020, a while ago.
Yeah. Human relations commission in there, just saying.
No, it's all
We were
good.
tired.
It's all good. You know, we're taking our time to thoughtfully consider. No sweat. It's all good. So, Mr. Jones, I mean, I could start off with the conference call if you'd like, or would you like to share something? Go
So,
ahead.
staff has presented to this committee, a 2-year plan and a 3-year plan to
Oh, that's right. Yeah. thanks.
transition from gas
Oh,
power
yeah.
to electric. Subsequently, Commissioner Edwards asked us, Mr. May, a consultant out of California, who is pretty keen on doing this work, who understands this work. We had a conference call yesterday. Fortunately, I was not able to attend, but I know some folks here were able to attend. Had a conversation with Suki today. I think I got updated pretty well, but Commissioner Edwards, I would ask you to kind of brief the rest of the group on what you believe.
Sure. Daniel May is with a nonprofit group that he created called the American Green Zone Alliance. And he's carved out a niche consultancy on assisting governments and large institutions into the transition away from gas-powered tools to electric tools. And we had a conference call on Tuesday with some staff members that are here today, actually. And I think, you know, it was a great introductory call to sort of explain what his organization provides in terms of services. And he answered a few questions from staff, you know, regarding notably the repair of battery powered tools, which is something that we've been facing here, how to comply with warranty provisions and just find people who will fix these things. And then he also touched on some of what we spoke at the last meeting regarding not just implementing these new tools, but managing the expectations of what these tools can do. So I'm thinking about when we were talking about downtown last time and how downtown spotless with nothing on the ground, no leaf on the ground, maybe is a little bit too far in this direction. We can maybe tone down expectations a little bit more so it's not spick and span. And that would that would be more in line with a tool operated by a battery, because as he pointed out, you know, many of these tools, they don't have the force of a 2-stroke gas motor. They don't have the cubic feet, the CFM cubic feet per minute force that runs through that tube, nor the wind speed. You know, some of these things can blow like 220 miles per hour, you know, like a Cat 5 hurricane. So, you know, I think it's important that we think about whether or not we will create a Cat 5 hurricane on our landscapes. You know, we can probably tone it down a little bit. and cut down on the dust and the destruction of some of our ecosystems. So anyway, we had a nice talk with staff, and it was a good opportunity to get together with staff, for me too, to hear their concerns. And where we left it is he would create just sort of a proposal of what his organization might provide if our government decides to contract with him to help assist us in this transition.
So,
Any one thing just to put it, and then I'll go right to you, is he did point out that, he has a la carte offerings, and I did mention to him that staff has done much work so far exploring these tools and running pilot programs. And he made clear, look, if you just want my expertise to look at the plan y'all have already created, that's something I can do. If you want me to come here and bring tools and show you which tool might work better for which job and have safety training, we can add that on. If you want to be a green zone, a certified green zone, that's another thing we can add on. So he was going to make that clear in his proposal so that we could decide what direction we want to go in that would best fit where we are. Go ahead.
and my only question is, I know when we discussed, Mr. May,
Maybe, that's right.
he was a source of expertise. So after your discussion, it sounds like he has a smorgasbord of things that, goodness. It seems like he has a smorgasbord of,
Offerings, right,
services.
absolutely.
So my question now becomes, is this going to go through some RFP process, or is it just going to reach out to, maybe the attorney or the system manager needs to?
RFP process would depend upon the contracting. So that's my understanding, $50,000 or less. For the illness, we would not have to go out to them.
Okay.
Certainly is a best practice to go procure, however, we wouldn't have to.
Okay.
I would look, I can't remember the person code that well, but I can look at it in the back office.
No, it sounds like he sounds great. I have no problem with that. I just don't want, I just want to be clear about what we are liable for,
Right.
and the process. But I'm good. You can call him tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the proposals back, to share with staff and see, what might be a good plate of services he might provide.
So 50,000 unless we do not have to go through.
That's my understanding. We can come back and, so once we get the proposal, at the following meeting to talk about what those rank. So.
Okay. That would be mine.
I'd like to hear from some staff what their initial reaction was would this be value added or not? Have they become just as much experts or enough experts for what we need to do at this point?
Well, I think it's important too. I mean, we haven't heard back from him any sort of proposal.
Right.
We don't really know. I don't really have a recommendation at this time how this committee might vote to engage him, after staff input. But I mean, sure, if staff wants to give input on their reaction to the call or anything like that, what they thought about it, or if they learned anything, got any good impression, or I don't know.
I think he has a very valid points. My curiosity is I really want to see some of the pieces of equipment. He said there's something we're missing or no opportunity to see it.
So you need to see more of his proposals or
We're very
services.
limited, and the thing he offered too is that he can bring different pieces that, because we can't just go to a distributor and say, hey, bring this over here, we'd like to try it
Yeah.
out. He said that he could go through a program where we could actually use it for a few weeks, try out different pieces.
Which could help with procurement. We could bring multiple brands
Right.
and show which one would be optimal for each job that we have within the government.
It seemed like when we discussed this before, there were already multiple brands being used at different levels. So I'm just curious how much more.
All right. Been able to try the pieces that we can acquire.
Yeah.
Which has been limited.
Value added from definitely is that. He also does offer interest to me the most about his program is training opportunities for end users. we maintenance and equipment, talk about is training for the end user cost to mitigate. So he showed them, the guys actually on the training drill, what the limits of the equipment. So they even shared on the call that same brand caught fire and this happens and people report back to him. So another, to echo what you said as well, for sure. He was very upfront that there's a certain time of year in certain places where you just force stroke. So that even in certified green zone. Every now and then there's like gas power. And I would appreciate it being
Right. Yeah. It's particularly during the fall season, you know, September, October. Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of trial and error, if we can use his expertise in the trial and error, is money that we might be advocating as a committee for in the budget process to get his expertise, to get that trial and error. And then if we trust his overall thing being the green approach and health and safety for the users and the environment, then he's not product driven.
Correct.
And then that can get us to where we start getting the procurement motivated by what he has learned and we have experienced and concur. I mean, if you guys got to where he said one thing, but you found out the different, we have that honest feedback loop. But not knowing what Nikki's thing is for a timeline, I would make a motion that we move forward with getting a $50,000 priority in our budget cycle that we start talking about tonight for what might be it might be up to that at this point and be ready for once we learn what we could use if it's just the equipment confirmation.
I can say.
Anyway.
Okay, 1 second.
So just,
we've got a motion for a recommended appropriation from the commission at large, but I did want to say, do you want to wait till we hear from Nikki on his transition plans?
yeah, but I also want, before the meeting's over, I would like us to get maybe to an action point.
Yes,
Budget oriented.
I agree.
And yeah,
I'm with you on that.
yeah, that's where I'm kind of like, we're in budget season now. And if we gotta scratch it, we scratch it, but, at least we're heading in this direction. Yeah.
Good. All right. Do you have some stuff about the transition amount?
So we have so we presented a 2-year and a 3-year transition plan. Can you either, we feel comfortable with either? I think we presented the 3-year transition plan first, because I think that was where we felt most comfortable. So we'll look at staff and I see some nodding. But we can make the 2-year transition plan work. So one question I have for Suki was, when I talked to her about this past meeting, I said, well, what did Mr. May think about our transition? Did it sound good? It sounded like we were on the right track. And I guess that didn't quite come up about what we were doing and how we thought about our plan. So that's one question.
That was kind of one, well, that was part of his a la carte, you know. We did not share, you know, here's our 3-year plan, step by step. Here's the amount. Here's what we're looking to purchase. Here's how many blowers, you know, it didn't get that specific. Yeah. But he did say, if that's something you would like my input on, I can give you a quote and look and see if your plan passes muster and give you recommendations or what.
So if we were going to engage, and Commissioner Edwards, I think you're correct. I think we should just wait until we see a proposal.
Yeah.
But if we were going to engage a consultant, I think the value would be is to ask them, are we on the right track? I feel like we're on the right track. I feel like Suki's got a pilot program and she's learning a lot over there. And I know that we're already utilizing electric powered leaf blowers. And we were getting feedback and we're understanding what's happening on the ground real time. But I guess my question to the consultant would be is people do?
And my concern on that is just, I know there was something like I think in the present mayor's budget, there's maybe just 20,000 right now around there for this transition. I don't want to spend 30,000 on a consultant to when what we're spending is 30,000 a year. So I don't want to get caught up into that unless we really feel like it's going to add value.
Well, does the committee feel, now hearing that what we had, should we pull up the
Mhm.
2-year plan and the 3-year plan again?
Yes.
Transition plans again, to sort of revisit that, we're gonna make budget recommendation today.
That would be helpful.
Chair, I also have a question as far as our charge, because I was thinking that the motion could just be relevant to having a little bucket of money relevant to our charge. But if our review of regulation of the use of gas-powered leaf blowers, including as pertains to the noise ordinance, we're addressing the noise ordinance just by virtue of this new equipment mode, but yet then we also may have categories
Yeah.
where the others don't.
Yeah, this is germane.
Right in there,
Yeah,
right
it's
in there.
germane.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then a motion doesn't need to be more specific than that at this point.
I don't
To
think so.
keep us
If
moving
it keeps
forward.
us, if it keeps it got us going, yeah.
I mean, I view this committee as possibly passing a motion that would recommend the commission at large to adopt a specific appropriation
That sounds,
to further the transition to battery-powered tools.
Yeah, that's noted. Which gets us through the budget process informally.
Right.
And then when it formally comes out of committee with more details, then the bucket's sitting there.
Right. That's right.
Watch.
I like it. We like it. We like it.
Gavin, do you remember your 2-year total? Because I'm looking at 2 totals right now, but I'm seeing leisure services.
I mean, just if I may as well, based on the prior conversation, and we can certainly, engage finance, security, and consultant services, but experience in the past, even if it's under $50,000 in terms of a quote for a consultant, that just means you don't necessarily have to review. It still means you have to use 3 quotes for similar services. So it's not a guarantee that this consultant be the selected consultant. And the $26,000, I believe, is currently in the mayor's budget. That was a joint proposal put forward by Leisure and Central Services prior to the discussion that we're having. That was a broad range of landscaping equipment, not just limited to blowers, that staff looking to initiate and build. Their experience already in practice over the past year or 2. That said, that amount would be divided between the 2 departments and not necessarily matching the amounts that I'll give right now. Total didn't change necessarily between the 2 or 3 years from central services. I mean, I have a certain amount of blowers that cost a certain amount. It's just a matter of how much you fund in 3 years. But ultimately, from the 2-year proposal, we were at 55,000 in initial equipment purchase. We purchased half of them, 20 blowers. There was another 21,000 on top of that for electricity, replacement batteries and maintenance. So essentially, this is called $75,000 proposal for the first year, and then you do that again the second year, but you have to add on 20,000 for maintenance costs and so on, because you're increasing that total. So we were at almost 93,000 for the second.
I've got leisure services around 30,000 for 2 years. Is that right, Alex?
Ours 30,000
Overall?
Over 2 years?
I was just typing in Gavin's numbers real quick. Central services and leisure services, just mentioned right there, our numbers should be about 90. The year one, 6 for years, just adding up.
And that's 2 years. We wanted to distribute that more across 3 years. We could do the math.
Also, I'm glad you brought figures weird. I think there's specific units. We were able to purchase as a single unit because of the thresholds in our purchasing policy. Once we get to buying $20,000 worth, we'll have to go out for quotes. That is where value added for somebody who does have experience with more brands. Typically is, there's also other things to consider in scoring. A lot of different metrics in scoring.
I like that, the value added of the contractor, helping us get from the lowest bidder to the quality that we identified as being worth the scoring. Being in the matrix.
Yeah.
Scoring.
Picking out the right tools. Yeah.
And what is the difference in this cost between if we just stayed the course with what we're doing? So do we know what that difference is and whether or not we could use any of the SPOST 100% energy funds to offset the cost difference?
And just to make sure, Commissioner, you mean if we don't go the electric route, we just maintain.
Right, well, I mean, we have our replacement costs versus upgrading to the electric. That difference, because the 100% energy work, like in the cost of building, was going to be used for supplementing the energy efficiency of the windows. There's a windows cost, then there's upgrading. That's an example.
I mean, I can tell you that for the same amount of gas powered 2-cycle blowers that we have, which is 40, we have calculated the annual fuel as well as the annual for those existing assets. Roughly that costs central services about $14,000 per year. That does not include replacement. Any purchase of, if we were to buy 40 brand new gas powered blowers, we'd probably be at about 18 to 20.
Batteries are what really.
And it's within the scope of this SPOST 2020. And have been in my office has been working with the fire department. There's been players in the fire department that are going through the same thing. So we've had those conversations. And T-SPOST, there's actually been passes. There's T-SPOST for electric tools. For those under all ones association set chat. So right now, fire department is doing the inventory. That with me, that inventory looked like they did do a product review. They settled on Nikita. That's what they settled on. But there's a lot of other, that was for their specific, their recent emergency vehicle tools. Had that conversation as well. There's still a lot in play as we start to put this together, and we've been trying to help support that as I get capacity within the office, which has been playing out for us. Have the people that actually begin to do have an option of looking at and see if they will provide some training. That's the kind of thing they get bonus points on. We haven't had a chance. A lot of moving parts. Certainly having the funding step forward and put this in a works. Because you read all the specs, get the piece of equipment and take an action. Hesitant personally to run go forward. We had a chance for several where we are literally, even though they say what it will do, things and we can go. It's great to use it. So I think we have that in mind.
So my question here is, how do we make sure that we have money in the budget that we're working on today in the next 2 weeks for this?
So today we have $26,000 in the budget related to transition, electric, gas to electric. Sure. Guess the question is, do we need more than that?
Yeah.
That 26,000 spaced off our pilots to date, right? That's we're just kind of incrementally trying to get there. I think that $26,000 was a staff recommended number.
Correct. It was recommended again prior to the type. This was, some string trimmers.
Right.
Floors. And if we go forward with the 26,000, implement this pilot under funds, it's about 18,000 for central, 7,000 for leisure. I mean, basically based on those numbers, it'll buy us about 7 to 8. So it wouldn't be a full 20 or 40 floors, about 7 or 8 from the central services.
So when you say 7 or 8, so I guess there would be some type of, to get us some kind of process to get us to the full amount. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. If there were no more funds allocated on this year's budget, or this upcoming budget, and we just had the 26.
I got you.
We would look to do the 7 or 8 back to the following year if you want us to bump up.
Okay.
To do the 3-year transition and get money there now, how much more money do we need to put in the budget
This year.
this year? Like,
Yeah, because right now we have the 2-year plan is 169,000. So if we're only doing 26, then we're 143,000 short.
On the 2-year transition plans. Right?
is it?
2 years.
What if we recommended, say, another 75, put it at around 100 with a recommendation to explore engagement with a consultant for expeditious transition, efficient transition.
So we're trying to get to 100 in this budget process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess being honest, like thinking about the many things that we're talking about in tonight's budget, like the library wages being a very large chunk of money as well, for an example. I'm hesitant to, maybe also recommending that we consider this. So this is part of the discussion tonight. That makes sense.
Yeah,
That we're
we
like,
just have to have a number to work with.
I'm comfortable saying like, let's include this in what we're talking about tonight and in the days ahead. I'm not comfortable walking out of this committee being like, yep, I'm committed to.
Well, there's no motion on the table.
100,000.
Yeah, there's no motion on the
Yeah, we're
table.
just,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if we did 100, that'd be chipping off 75 off the 600 excess in the mayor.
And there's going to be some other things that are going to shift too. So yeah, this is just conversation, I would imagine.
To add to that conversation, this is also one-time equipment. So in my mind, I think promoting 75,000 to go with the 26, because Gerald's budget was so many months ago. Your part there. So we're catching up with our studying and input with that. And I still think that an allocation for the consultant is separate equipment, because the consultant can't be SPLOST 2020 or 20 or T-SPLOST. We want to do something now, and we've got, unless we shift priorities with the reserve that the mayor left us to play with, so to speak.
Y'all play with your portion.
I'm just saying, there could be other play, but the equipment can come out of other buckets, but still the consultant bucket to me is something.
Isn't that what we're going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, but as a committee, we obviously don't have to have unanimous agreement for this voice of the committee to come out. So we can talk about that, and tonight's just one discussion, and next Thursday's another budget discussion, and so on and so forth.
Can someone summarize for me what we think the value of the consultant is? Because I mean, it's already a lot of money for a plan. I think we've already got in place to just get the tools. Paying someone to consult with us on it, I'm getting hesitant.
I can summarize what staff has just told us, and that was the value added for the experience and expertise on the equipment to use, and not having a vendor limited procurement process, and that the trial and error of our money of the equipment we can get, learning from that, and then having that person give a trial period, and the trial and error of the previous people that he has worked, this person has worked with. That's what I thought it was giving us,
Yeah,
kind of losing our
right.
trial and error and equipment stuff that could catch on fire as an
How
example.
much is the consultant gonna be?
Well, that's the
That's-
thing, that's the thing we're waiting on. You know, we're waiting to hear the proposal,
Yeah.
see where it's at.
I do want to go on record. I do not support consultants blindly. I really don't.
Yeah,
I really
Yeah.
don't.
right.
And I think that probably should be down the level of things that when we get to, I am not supportive of consultants, period.
So you said consultants blindly.
Blindly.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen.
I'm with you.
Okay.
But I feel that we're at a point, and this is what I love about committee work, is that we have gotten to a point where we're hearing the value of that, and it's not a consultant and then the information sits on the shelf. This is a hands-on.
Right, and if it's a consultant that leads to better efficiency and better prices, that is different than making a consultant where it's on the shelf, so.
Yeah, I don't
But
do
we
the
need-
shelves of consultants.
We need to know what the price is, though.
So we don't necessarily need a motion coming out of today's committee because of the details that are still missing, but we can move forward with our opinions.
Yes,
Getting through this committee.
we will move forward with our opinions.
So there.
I think so. I mean, you know, not yet knowing the cost of services for the consultant sort of puts us in a gray area, because I would like to recommend an appropriation in tandem with the exploration of engaging a consultant, because of what I've heard from staff, the value add that may exist based on what May tells us in terms of training and helping to identify the right tools for the job.
You could have a recommendation, a budget recommendation for the 75,000 to bring it up to 100,000. That would include for equipment and or consultation as approved, above, that would leave it as an option there for us. Because there is also the option that there may be we could use some T-SPLOS funds as well.
Is that a motion?
Are we making a motion?
And I think we don't have the details for that. And
Yeah.
that could come out.
Yeah, it's up to you.
I just think,
Yeah.
If I could note that 75 added to the 26 does put us in line the 3-year transition.
Yes,
that we're
yeah.
talking about. So I think that's appropriate now. Obviously, there has to be some discussion around where that money comes from, because we know
Well,
we're in a budget session. I would also note, though, that Mr. May is not necessarily a done deal.
Right.
Right.
That Mr. Hasper mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
No, we don't have to do it. We do need to find out if the $50,000 threshold is true. But if it is, we don't have to go through an RFP process. We do still have to go solicit 3 quotes.
Well, I'll make a motion that we consider they recommend a $75,000 budget item for the transition to electric powered leaf blowers.
Could I mention one other thing?
Well, hold on one second. There's a motion on the table.
To be, right. So that's my motion.
Okay.
To be considered for leaf blowers and or consultant if deemed a value added.
I'll second that, and
Okay.
with one thing.
Okay, so just one
I
second,
just want to
Commissioner.
ask about one thing.
Okay, just one second though.
Okay.
Just restate your motion real quick, so we're all
Okay, a
clear.
motion to recommend bringing up a $75,000 budget item.
This is in addition to the 26.
Yes,
Got it.
an additional 75
Okay.
for the transition to electric powered leaf blowers and or consultation fees to be a part of that, not the whole thing. I mean,
Yeah, the
like,
consultation can just be.
Which may include.
consultation with agreement.
Prudent
Yes.
execution of consultant services.
Yeah,
Okay,
I second it.
all right.
Go make your
So the
comments.
motion on the table is to increase the $26,000 transition appropriation by $75,000 to make it $101,000 to transition gas burning leaf blowers to electric leaf blowers and consider the prudent
Yes,
engagement of consultant services to affect the goals herein.
you got it, you got it.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Thornton. Okay,
Do you have a comment?
do you want to say anything quickly, just to support, and then we'll
I,
go to
of
Commissioner
course,
Thornton?
support that motion that I made with the realization too, that we may find other funds beside the general fund to
Okay.
fund that
Cool.
budget item.
The only thing I wanted to say was that, that this would be at that 3-year threshold. That was what I wanted to add to clarify, and, okay, that is
For a 3-year transition.
All right.
a 3-year transition.
Anyone against the motion? Parliamentary inquiry, state your inquiry, sir.
The SPLOST funding that you mentioned could be used for this. SPLOST, so I hear that SPLOST eligible. Is there actually funding on hand that could cover this? And if so, how much of it? Do we know?
Yeah.
So we get back to you on that?
We do have a lot of commitments and some of that, the whole process, because we're trying to accelerate it to get those purchases.
I'm seeing nods here, but then lots of hesitancy here. So
Okay.
No,
We'll
I'm
get
not,
back to you.
no,
We'll get
I
back to
was
you.
agreeing with you. I just didn't
Yeah.
expect them to tell me right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was agreeing with you. I just knew it was coming back later. Okay.
Staff will report back on possible SPOS funding. Okay, anyone want to speak in favor of the motion?
I'm very interested in what Mike Morton wanted to add when that time is available.
Okay,
I'll give my inquiry if I can, but it's waiting to say.
do you feel can you wait, or do you want to inject your input? Okay, all right, we'll get right to you. Okay, hearing no more, all in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Thornton.
The only thing I was gonna say is, in framing, sometimes, I mean, I think in terms of the tools, but I think of the tools and the battery, but there's also the logistics and how that works. And keeping that in mind, we've got a lot of vehicles that we move things around and don't have them so they can charge battery. So for that, until that electric fleet gets in there, there's gonna be other expenses that will come as we try to transition. And get something that's more efficient for our equipment on the site. So logistics would also play.
Like that battery generator you
Yeah.
brought last time.
We're hoping that does.
Yeah.
We're testing it out. So,
Good, yeah.
That kind of idea.
And it could be part of the consultants'
Sure, yeah.
expertise that we can learn from
Yeah.
there. So if we keep our motions to where we're not hand tied to leaf blowing equipment
Yeah,
in this transition.
right.
But I'm happy with what we have moving forward.
Great.
Do we need a motion to adjourn? Because I'll be glad to throw it on the table.
Sure. That would be in order, Commissioner.
Motion to accept.
Any opposed? Unanimous consent, the motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
See you 5:30.
Everybody here has to be there. But